The Life and Sad Ending of Chet Atkins. Chet Atkins was born on June 20, 1924, in Luttrell, Tennessee, near Clinch Mountain. Born into a poor farming family in East Tennessee, Atkins grew up there and in rural Georgia. His father was a music teacher and his half-brother, Jimmy, was a successful guitarist who worked with the Les Paul Trio in New York. His parents divorced when he was 6 years old, after which he was raised by his mother. He was the youngest of 3 boys and a girl. He started out on the ukulele, later moving on to the fiddle, but made a swap with his brother, Lowell, when he was 9, an old pistol and some chores for a guitar. He stated in his 1974 autobiography, "We were so poor and everybody around us was so poor that it was the 40s before anyone even knew there had been a depression." Forced to relocate to Fortson, Georgia, outside of Columbus, to live with his father because of a critical asthma condition. Atkins was a sensitive youth who made music his obsession. Because of his illness, he was forced to sleep in a straight-back chair to breathe comfortably. On those nights, he played his guitar until he fell asleep holding it, a habit that lasted his whole life. Atkins became an accomplished guitarist while he was in high school. He used the restroom in the school to practice because it had good acoustics. His first guitar had a nail for a nut and was so bowed that only the first few frets could be used. He later purchased a semi-acoustic electric guitar and amp, but he had to travel many miles to find an electrical outlet since his home didn't have electricity. After dropping out of high school in 1942, Atkins landed a job at WNOX AM radio in Knoxville. Atkins and Jethro Burns married twin sisters, Leona and Lois Johnson, who sang as Laverne and Fern Johnson, the Johnson sisters. Leona Atkins outlived her husband by 8 years, dying in 2009 at the age of 85. He married Leona Johnson on July 3, 1946, and they had one child together. Along with those years, his career was recounted with what I know as follows. Atkins made his first appearance at the Opry in 1946 as a member of Foley's band. He also recorded a single for Nashville-based Bullet Records that year. Career ups and downs are inevitable for every human being. Chet Atkins made his first RCA Victor recordings in Chicago in 1947, but they did not sell. He did some studio work for RCA that year but had relocated to Knoxville again. In 1949, he left WNOX to join June Carter with Mother Maybelle and the Carter Sisters on KWTO. The group relocated to Nashville in the mid-1950s. Atkins began working on recording sessions and performing on WSMAM and the Opry. Atkins became a member of the Opry in the 1950s. In addition to recording, Atkins was a design consultant for Gretsch, which manufactured a popular Chet Atkins line of electric guitars from 1955 to 1980. He became manager of RCA Victor's Nashville studios, eventually inspiring and seeing the completion of the legendary RCA Studio B, the first studio built specifically for the purpose of recording on the now famous Music Row. Also, later on, Chet and Owen Bradley would become instrumental in the creation of Studio B's adjacent building RCA Studio A as well. Atkins used the Jordanaires and a rhythm section on hits such as Jim Reeves' Four Walls and Hell Have to Go and Don Gibson's Oh Lonesome Me and Blue Blue Day. The once rare phenomenon of having a country hit to cross over to pop success became more common. He and Bradley had essentially put the producer in the driver's seat, guiding an artist's choice of material and the musical background. Atkins made his own records, which usually visited pop standards and jazz, in a sophisticated home studio, often recording the rhythm tracks at RCA and adding his solo parts at home, refining the tracks until the results satisfied him. Guitarists of all styles came to admire various Atkins albums for their unique musical ideas and in some cases experimental electronic ideas. In this period, He became known internationally as Mr. Guitar, inspiring an album, Mr. Guitar, engineered by both Bob Ferris and Bill Porter, Ferris Replacement. At the end of March 1959, Porter took over as chief engineer at RCA's Nashville studio, in the space eventually known as Studio B after the facility expanded with a second studio in 1960. He took a considerable risk during the mid-1960s, when the civil rights movement sparked violence throughout the South, by signing country music's first African-American singer, Charlie Pride, who sang rawer country than the smoother music Atkins had pioneered. Atkins' biggest hit single came in 1965, with Yakety Axe, an adaptation of Yakety Sax, by his friend, the saxophonist Boots Randolph. He rarely performed in those days and eventually hired other RCA producers, such as Bob Ferguson and Felton Jarvis, to lessen his workload. Before his mentor Scholes died in 1968, Atkins had become vice president of RCA's country division. In the 1970s, Atkins became increasingly stressed by his executive duties. He produced fewer records, but could still turn out hits such as Perry Como's 1973 pop hit and I Love You So. In the 1980s, Atkins was a member of the $1 Million Band. He is also well known for his song Yankee Doodle Dixie, in which he played Yankee Doodle and Dixie simultaneously, on the same guitar. Atkins ended his 35-year association with RCA in 1982 and signed with Columbia Records, for whom he produced a debut album in 1983. In later years, he even went back to radio, appearing on Garrison Keillor's Prairie Home Companion radio program, on American Public Media Radio, even picking up a fiddle from time to time, and performing songs such as Bob Wills' Carina, Carina and Willie Nelson's Seven Spanish Angels with Nelson on a 1985 broadcast of the show at the Bridges Auditorium on the campus of Pomona College. Atkins received numerous awards, including 14 Grammy Awards and 9 Country Music Association Awards for Instrumentalist of the Year. He continued performing in the 1990s, but his health declined after he was diagnosed again with colon cancer in 1996. In 1993, he was honored with the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. Billboard magazine awarded him its Century Award, its highest honor for distinguished creative achievement, in December 1997. The story ends his life. Chet Atkins' health deteriorated after he was re-diagnosed with colon cancer in 1996. He died on June 30, 2001, at his home in Nashville, Tennessee, at the age of 77. His memorial was held at the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville. He was buried at the Harpeth Hills Memory Garden in Nashville. In 2002, Atkins was posthumously inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. His award was presented by Marty Stewart and Brian Setzer and accepted by Atkins' grandson, Jonathan Russell. The following year, Atkins ranked number 28 in Country Music Television's 40 Greatest Men of Country Music. In November 2011, Rolling Stone ranked Atkins number 21 on their list of the 100 greatest guitarists of all time. Dear Chet Atkins, we mourn you. What you do will be nostalgic forever. In the afterlife, please smile.